The Cincinnati Reds took the first half of the Kyle Schwarber Memorial Bowl.
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hi, I'm Jeff from Locked On Reds. He's Connor from Locked On Phillies, and we are going to break down this Reds-Phillies first half of the 6-game series this season. As the Reds took 2 out of 3 in Philadelphia, we'll give you the highlights and the heroes of the series. A little bit later on, we're going to talk about these crazy bullpens for both teams as the season rolls along because confidence seemed to be a little bit shaky in these 3 games. But later on, we'll get into the National League playoff picture as the season moves along. It's going to be so crowded. Both these teams are going to have a hard time standing out, and there's going to be a lot that they need to do moving forward. Thanks for joining us here. And Connor, as you look at this series, the biggest takeaway from you in the Kyle Schwarber Memorial Bowl was?
Well, part of it was that Kyle Schwarber didn't play, and you could see how much this offense runs on him being available. But outside of who wasn't available, there is a clear hierarchy in the Phillies starting rotation right now. If Christopher Sanchez and Zach Wheeler throw in a series, you're probably going to win it. If your 3 guys in Aaron Nola, Jesus Luzardo, and Andrew Painter throw in a series, it's going to be hard for you to win 2 out of those 3 games with how those guys are going right now. And starting pitching sets the table as much as we're going to talk about bullpens later. You got to get to that point where you're competitive enough to use your high leverage arms. I thought that was a clear issue for the Phillies in these games, especially when you looked at Nola in the final start.
Yeah, that was something that I looked at coming into the series, and I thought that the Reds had a good chance to win 2 out of 3 just based on the starting pitcher matchups. Like Jesus Luzardo, the first time through the lineup looked pretty good. It was just once guys had seen him once or twice, they were able to kind of get in and really have some good at-bats against him. Andrew Painter kind of impressed me the most, and coming into this, he had a 6.2 ERA, held the Reds to 2 runs in that game. And I thought for a minute the Reds were still going to be able to do all right because they were able to score enough once the Phillies bullpen came in. We'll get into bullpens in just a minute, but overall the starting pitcher matchups definitely favored the Redlegs. And Chase Burns yet again, I mean, the second time in his career facing the Phillies in Philly, dude is just big enough for the moment. I love watching that dude pitch.
You know, my favorite thing about him is too, and I think Andrew Painter could learn a little bit from this, because they're both hard-throwing guys, but Chase Burns has, count them, 1, 2, 3 pitches that he uses. So many times you see guys come up, and it like a guy spends 3-4 years developing in a minor league system. They're like, add a cutter, add a sweeper, do all of this different stuff to add to your arsenal. If you can throw and you can dominate 3 pitches, you can get guys out at the highest level. And something that has been talked about with Andrew Painter, who was good in game 1 of this series, it's just he's non-committal to the way he wants to pitch guys, and maybe simplifying what he goes to on a night-to-night basis will make things easier for him to make that transition. But Burns is special. 23 years old only and dominating like this, plus the arm he's got. Yeah, he's going to be a problem.
It's funny you point out the 3 pitches because early on in their careers, Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo were 2-pitch guys, and we kept saying you need a 3rd pitch. And sometimes I would look at different pitchers that had like a Cheesecake Factory menu worth of pitches that they use and think, man, that must be nice. But you're right. It kind of feels like sometimes you get a little bogged down in the variety that you're too worried about throwing too many pitches that you're not good at any of them. You're a jack of all trades and a master of none, but you see that slider that Chase Burns throws, man, that is, sometimes the shape of it is crazy. Sometimes it's a lot more horizontal. Sometimes it's a lot more vertical. If I'm a dude standing into the box, I have no clue what's going to happen there with that one pitch. And he showed why he is so dominant with it. I think at least the Reds broadcast I mentioned, he has more strikeouts on the slider than any other pitcher that throws a slider right now.
Yeah, and that's something you see with Christopher Sanchez, who obviously didn't throw in this series, but his changeup generates the most whips in baseball, and he is unbelievable with that pitch. couple starts ago, he was throwing one that almost cut, and he can change the shape on the changeup enough to vary that pitch. Even having a great out pitch at the major league level is not enough once you get film on it. But when you only have a couple of pitches to focus on, it allows you to vary the shape, get more comfortable with throwing it in different circumstances. And that's something that, even though he's young, Chase Burns seems like he's got a really good hold of. And that was clearly the most impressive single game performance, I thought, in this series, with what he did.
Yeah, I felt like if you were to start the All-Star game today, it's going to be Christopher Sanchez. Chase Burns has an argument, but Sanchez has just been better so far this season. And I mean, he was clearly high up in the Cy Young category last year. Like, I think that was the lucky part of the Reds for this series, missing Sanchez, missing Wheeler. The other lucky part was, as I jokingly called it, the Kyle Schwarber Memorial Bowl. He didn't play. I don't know if he had a bad crunch wrap from Taco Bell or something, but man, dude just wasn't a part of this series. I think it's a clause in his contract now, since he took a visit to the Reds in the offseason. And for 2 seconds, I'm not going to lie, Connor, for 2 seconds, I really felt like Kyle Schwarber was going to come to Cincinnati. And then after the fact, I was like, how did I feel that way? That was never going to happen, but he didn't play. Not at all. Not even a pinch hit appearance.
Well, there's your IOU from you not getting him. That's as much as I can promise you. He's a guy that's been incredibly durable. You don't really see him miss time. And a lot of conversation was weird around this because the illness kind of popped out of nowhere. He had a weird slide in the series against the Pirates that led into this one, where he got thrown out of third base and kind of slid awkwardly. There was thought, could it actually be like an ankle injury or something that they're covering up with the guise of illness? So my two principles on this have always been, the Phils are not withholders of information. They've been very upfront with injury issues. Some organizations do try and cover things up for whatever reason. The Phils are not that way. And Kyle Schwarber is a guy that is also very forthcoming with the media. So this doesn't seem like it was any type of like hiding of an injury campaign. We got a chance to talk to, on the radio side, doing Sports Talk Radio this morning, Anthony Sanfilippo, who covers the team, that I've had a chance to pop into the clubhouse points this year. And it sounds like it's just your run-of-the-mill stomach bug, whatever that means to you. I think we can all imagine it. We've all been there. And that might be tough to play a little bit of baseball with. So I imagine he'll be back, but you guys got a break. And that was also a big part of why the Phillies offense seemed less consistent than it has been in previous series.
I just thought maybe he was watching the Reds bullpen too closely or something. And then he was like, oh, this is making me sick. But yeah, like I was surprised to not see him at all. And I had even jokingly said that, you know, I was hoping that the Reds would show him what he's missing in this series. And he didn't play, so he's not going to see a whole lot there. But no, I found it intriguing, though, that Trey Turner really started to blossom. It kind of seems like he's had a slow start to the year, but that was the guy in the lineup that caused the most fits for the Reds. They were able to control Bryce Harper a little bit more than I expected as well. That was what surprised me the most, though, is that it felt like it was Trey Turner. And if there was somebody else that got in on the action, you couldn't really pinpoint who it was, because it was just kind of a bunch of dudes.
Yeah, the consistency is what's kind of missing for the Phillies so far this year when it comes to the lineup outside of Schwarber and Harper. And even those guys have had stretches. Like Schwarber, before he got hot like this, had 8 straight strikeouts in a series with the Marlins. Harper had a slow start to the year, which was exacerbated by the not elite argument between him and Dave Dombrowski that was waging this offseason. But the problem for the Phillies has been they can't handle left-handed starting pitching. One of my issues in this series was you're seeing 2 lefties, and the righty you're seeing is pretty darn good. So it's going to be a tall task. That lays on 2 pairs of shoulders, and that's Alec Bohm and Trey Turner. And Bohm is on a nice little hit streak, and that's good to see. But Trey Turner won the National League batting title last year. If he is not the guy you saw in this series more consistently, the Phillies are not going to hit lefties. So that's an upside, but it's still something they haven't gotten consistently enough. So hopefully that's a bright side to take out of this series to look at going forward.
Yeah, there was a couple of guys for the Phillies in that lineup. The Reds, on the other hand, Sal Stewart seems to have broken out of his slump. At the first 15 games in May, he hit $150. He's on a 4-game hit streak now, and that 4th game he hit 4 hits, including a home run. He's looking every bit the part that we hoped he would be. I don't even necessarily know, Connor, that I had this high of hopes for him. Like, we knew it was going to be Elly Cruz, and we needed a Robin to his Batman, and it's clear that is Sal. And I might even argue it's just two Batmans.
Yeah, I could totally see that. You know how, as a Philadelphia fan, because our biggest gauge emotionally is hatred. That's just kind of how Philadelphia works. When I come out of a series like, man, I hate that guy now. That's how I know. And I was telling you before he came on to record, like Sal Stewart became a hate the face. I don't know if it's the competitive at bats. I don't know if it's the eyebrows, but he killed the Phillies. And for a younger guy having some of like the close calls with check swings and the ABS challenges and the way that he handles his at bats, it's like you're right on the verge of getting him out and being able to battle through that. You'll see a lot of young players give in. He did not much at all in this series, and that's something that is really a spot to grow on. So I was impressed by what I saw.
That's been a consistent theme with him, which I've been very happy about. He fights with two strikes. He is not an easy out. And I think the other part too, like if I was watching him from an opposing team's perspective, one of the things that he does, and it always just kind of makes me kind of like smirk and sometimes chuckle depending on what pitch it is. If he watches a pitch go by and it's called a strike, he does that thing where like he kind of like steps out of the box and he's just like shaking his head. It's just like, did he just download something? Like he's just like, oh, okay, I saw it, I know it. Here we go. I'm ready. And like, I think just for me, like as I watch that, I'm just like, that's such a funky quirk. Like if I were a pitcher on the mound, I saw a guy doing that, I'd be like, what the heck are you shaking your head about, man? Like, come on.
My thought was always, this guy just saw something he likes that he's not going to let go by again. Or this guy is like, okay, I'm going to try and show some false bravado because I don't have a handle on this. I'd imagine at the major league level, it's more often the former, where these guys are seeing a pitch and they're like, all right, I've seen it. I've got my information. I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, you fake it till you make it, but when you're at the major league level, you kind of made it. So hopefully he continues the whole like he made it thing, because he's playing really well right now, and I hope that he can keep building on that. Something that wasn't very well, bullpens, and that's all inclusive here, not just the Reds, but also the Phillies. We're going to break down the differences between a bullpen that has an elite closer and the bullpen that ain't got one whatsoever. Coming up next. When it comes to baseball, though, there's so much superstition. And I mean, you might have your rally cap, you might have your routine, that special seat that you sit in, you know, you got to sit in your chair whenever the game happens. And when it comes to superstition, honestly, that comes to products for hair thinning too. There's a lot of hype. Not always a whole lot of confidence behind it, though. That's why there's Nutrafol, the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand of the official hair growth partner of Major League Baseball. Here's what stood out to me when it comes to Nutrafol. I like how Nutrafol takes more personalized approach with formulas designed for different stages and needs. I've actually been using I have some bad family history when it comes to hair loss, and things like Nutrafol are a godsend because they're NSF certified for when everything comes to the clinically tested, proven part of their hair loss supplements. Find out why Nutrafol is the only hair growth supplement brand trusted by Major League Baseball. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. And as the Major League Baseball season goes along, the best way to get your ticket to your next game is with Game Time. I use Game Time all the time, whether I'm going to Great American Ballpark to watch the Reds play at home or I'm following the Reds on the road. And I've gotten the chance to go down to Philadelphia. Sure, I'd be eating me a nice big cheesesteak, but I'd also be jumping on Game Time to get the best deals and figure out the best seat because they show you your view from your seat right there on your phone. There's no surprise. You're not going to end up behind some kind of big stanchion or big pole or something like that and have a bad view. You know what your view is going to be right before you buy the ticket. Plus, they show you your price with all the fees and taxes included. You don't get surprised. Check out the Game Time app today. Download the app and create an account. Use the promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, to save $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Game Time app today. Use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Thanks for making Locked On Reds and Locked On Phillies part of your day, your first listen, all the many listens that you do. And thanks for helping make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the country. You can also take your everydayership up a notch and go ad-free. Join the Locked On Reds and Locked On Phillies everydayer clubs. It's lockedonreds.supercast.com or lockedonphillies.supercast.com. You get an ad-free feed, group chat in the Discord with all of the MLB hosts and fans, not just your team. You can talk some trash when you see the Kyle Schwarber Memorial Series Part 2, whenever the Phils come to town in Cincinnati in July, and so much more. Again, links in the description of today's show down below. Connor, one of the things, honestly, probably the second most important thing to the lineup was the ineffective bullpens. And I guess with one comes the other, because there was lots of hits late in ball games, whether that was off the Reds bullpen or off the Phillies bullpen. The Phillies won game 1 thanks to some late game heroics against the Reds bullpen. The Reds won game 2 thanks to some run scoring against Jesus Luzardo, even more run scoring against the Phillies bullpen. And then in game 3, it was just kind of a mismatch. Reds got a lot of runs off of everybody. Ultimately, I want to get your take on the Phillies bullpen, because when you got Juan Duran and you get into the 9th inning and you're throwing that guy in there, you feel really good. But getting between the starter and to him is the journey. That's the issue.
Yeah, the Phillies have an elite level bullpen on paper. So they started off the season looking pretty darn good for about a week. And then you got a couple of guys hit the injured list, including Juan Duran. And it's kind of, they've gotten back to full strength now, but there's a story in 3 parts. You see an early flash of how good this bullpen can be. You hit a mid-period where they're losing 10 games straight. The manager's getting fired. You have 4 of your normal 8 bullpen arms on the injured list. And you're just waiting for these guys to come back so you can actually see what this team can be. And if you get it to the 9th for the Phillies. You guys saw that in game 1. You saw it in Boston. Like Pittsburgh, you didn't really need it because it wasn't too competitive of a series. You're welcome for that, by the way. But when you get it to the 9th, you're pretty comfortable with where you stand there. A lot of roles have changed, though, because of the injured list time. Brad Keller has been your only real consistent high leverage guy that you've had this year that is actually you can pencil him in for 7th, 8th, or 9th inning that hasn't spent time on the injured list. You saw a little time from Ryan Kirkering to start the year, Duran, Alvarado, and with that comes moving around of pieces. I love consistency. I threw out of the bullpen when I played college baseball, and I think defined roles and knowing, hey, if it's the 7th inning and there's a righty coming up or a couple of righties coming up that we want to get out, this guy's got it. Today, July, September, October. And with a set closer, you're one step closer to that. And I think the Phillies will still be an elite unit when everything's all said and done. I just think there have been some changes around of roles for guys like Brad Keller, who had to be the closer for a little stretch there, Ryan Kirkering, who's thrown anywhere from the 5th to the 8th inning, and Jose Alvarado, who switched around a good amount too.
Yeah, we don't love relievers coming in the 5th inning because, gosh, that's happened too much with the Reds here recently with a lot of injuries to the starting staff. And I think that's kind of shocked them a little bit early. Like the month of April, the Reds bullpen was a heck of a unit. They were really nailing down a lot of wins. And then the month turned to May, and they forgot all that. And they just started throwing some really bad stuff. Like right now, if you're just keeping your bat on your shoulder against most Reds relievers, you're probably going to end up at first base because there's a lot of inconsistency with their command and control, especially guys like Connor Phillips and things like that. But on the whole, I still am bullish about how this bullpen can move forward. The biggest issue is they don't have a closer. And even when Emilio Pagan is healthy, Emilio Pagan had a career year last year when it came to saves and things like that. He still had some moments where he was a bit erratic and he blew some saves in some key moments. And before he hit the injured list with a grade 2 hamstring strain, there were some questions as to whether he was going to remain the closer long term, because the Reds have some talent and guys like Graham Ashcraft and Tony Santillan that could fit into that role. But like you mentioned, it's a little bit fluid right now. And the Reds pride themselves, and Terry Francona said this multiple times, pride themselves on any one guy coming in at any one moment. But I think that you're right. Like any baseball player is a creature of habit. Whether or not they're telling you that in an interview is another thing. But I think that we all kind of know that these guys want to know what the deal is before they get up and start warming up in the bullpen. And so when you got a guy, like you mentioned with Brad Keller, whatever that inning might be, or Ryan Kirkering, whatever that inning might be, That's the same way that it's been for guys like Ashcraft and Santillan and Brock Burke, who we saw give up a homer in the series finale in this one. Like, ultimately, you kind of wonder a bit, would it be better had the Reds had a closer, and you feel better about the long term of this bullpen? Because a lot of Reds fans right now are thinking, just scrap the whole thing and start over, because we got a lot of question marks out there.
Yeah, if you have a high-level closer that that has experience at the major league level, I think that's always the best way to go. But funny enough, from experience, I'm going to tell you the fluid way is the best way for where the Reds are at right now. The Phillies, until they got Joan Duran at last year's trade deadline, also did that fluid approach for the most part. They had a little stretch where like Craig Kimbrell was the guy in 2023. I don't think Phillies fans like that. But the biggest trouble that the Phillies got into in those situations was trying to find a closer when you don't have one. I'm not talking about trade or signing. I'm talking about, hey, this guy just had 2 good appearances. You've got the 9th, buddy. The funny thing with modern bullpens is, as much as I'd like it to be the 90s and early 2000s, where you have the setup man, you have the closer, every day you've got the same strategy and the same great 4 or 5 arms throw every day. Analytics has brought the game into such a more matchup-based space. And for that, rather than trying to force somebody into a situation where they might not be comfortable and say, hey, you've got the next 3 games that we go into save situations, I think until you find a guy that is truly and like undeniably a closer, you know it when you see it. You shouldn't have to squint at Mason Miller and be like, what inning are you throwing, pal? Until you find that guy for sure, I actually think the fluid situation is the best to just play matchup based for 4 or 5 of your best trusted arms and run with that, because at least it gives the guys an idea of, I know what type of situation I'm going to be looking at based on where they're at in the lineup.
I really hope that what we saw from Tony Santillan in this series, and I'm wearing, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing his t-shirt. I love Tony Santillan, my favorite dude in this bullpen. He has been through some struggles, though, and he was a guy, he pitched 80 ball games last year, and I'm pretty sure he warmed up in 4 or 5 more. So technically, he was up in the bullpen half the year, or greater than half the year. And so I wonder a little bit how that carryover fatigue is working for him. His 2 appearances against the Phillies were good. Up until that, he had like 6 straight starts where he allowed at least 1, or 6 straight appearances where he allowed at least 1 run. And 4 of those 6, he allowed at least 1 home run. So he's gone through a bit of a tough stretch. I really hope he's bouncing back, because this bullpen is so much better when you have good Tony Santillan in there, who, for my money, is the closer when Emilio Pagan's not there. But kind of like you said, like, what closer means is really just who are you bringing in the highest leverage point, and not necessarily he's got to pitch the 9th inning. I agree with you. I feel like that setup is better for modern bullpens than just 7th, 8th, 9th, you know who you know what you're dealing with here. That's going to be better for the matchups in the long run.
Yeah, and it just helps if you also have a manager who you trust. And I think you guys are doing all right in that category right now. So if that's what you feel, you made the right hire. And I think that's a great place to be.
I'm glad you brought up managers, because I have a question for you about Don Mattingly that I want to ask, because I'm curious how this is going to move forward for the rest of the year in a crowded National League that, honestly, it feels like you really want to go for your division so you feel better about your playoff spot. There's a lot of work to do for both these teams.
Speaking of making the right hire, when you're in a situation where you need to find that, well, let me just tell you a little story about how I got started here at Locked On. The guy who actually hired me is the guy you're seeing next to me here on this crossover. Jeff Carr did that whole process, and I hope he thinks he made a good one. But the problem is that every organization does not have a Jeff Carr to run things for you. But each and every one of you out there that need to do some hiring for your company can use Indeed sponsored jobs. Workplace chaos and those deadlines stacking up and your inbox overflowing, those are common problems that take you away from the important part of your job, which is getting better people into the organization. And here's a great stat to tell you. In just the time I've been talking to you about them, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. It's proven to work. Plenty of places use it. You could be the very next one to get set up to make sure your company's hiring through Indeed sponsored jobs. And even better, listeners of Locked On Reds and Locked On Phillies are going to get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That way your job's promoted, more people can find it. The candidates who fit what you're looking for, like location, skills, and experience, will have it easy as pie to be able to find the position that you have open. So just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Make sure you support our show, Locked On Phillies or Locked On Reds, whichever one you like better, and tell them that you heard about them from us. Again, that's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply, but if you need to hire, that's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs.
Flattery will get you everywhere, my friend.
You know it will.
Thanks for joining us today on this Lockdown MLB crossover. You can follow us on social media over on X. You can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. And you can follow Connor at ConnorThomas975 on X as well. Are you on TikTok? I forget.
Yeah, I am as well. I'm not as active, but I'm on there. I'm an old guy, so I'm more of an Instagram Reels type of guy. We'll put it all up here. You can get our content anywhere.
I'll say I love watching a good cooking video on TikTok, but definitely on TikTok, Talking Reds as well, at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. And you can follow the shows at, is it LO_Phillies or is it?
It is.
It is LO_Phillies and at Locked On Reds, all one word. Those are on every social media app at them. All right, Connor, when it comes to the rest of the season, I have a big question because teams go through struggles nowadays in professional sports, and the first thing that everybody wants to do is get rid of the manager, get rid of the head coach in other sports, the manager in baseball. The Phillies did that thing. Is it because of that they are now playing well, or is it the roster? Because I tend to believe, especially in Major League Baseball nowadays, managers can be more of a negative than a positive. And was it just the fact that Don Mattingly is less of a negative than Rob Thompson?
It has nothing to do with Don Mattingly, Rob Thompson, or any other manager on the planet Earth. So when I was initially looking at the Phils in the 10-game losing streak and like, when could this happen? I'm more of a conservative guy when it comes to major moves like that. I'd rather give them time because baseball is more of the leave it alone sport than anything else you see in North American professional sports. But I looked at the day that the Phillies came back from the series against the Pirates. That was my mark, even like a month ago, to say, hey, Topper, you've got until then to save your job, because the quality of opponents you were playing significantly easier than there was a stretch where they went Cubs, Braves, who were at the time 2 of the hottest teams in the National League, still very good teams. And the Braves, we see where they are in the standings, right up there at the top. And the easier opponent, plus this small little detail of all of a sudden them having the best pitching staff, starting rotation in baseball in the period since Don Mattingly took over. Those are the 2 biggest things. Don Mattingly said himself, I don't know much about pitching. And like, the guy didn't pitch. He played in the majors for a long time. He admitted when he took the job, I don't know. I'm going to leave that up to Caleb Cotham, who's the pitching coach. So he's already absolved himself of any credit there. It was circumstantial. The move needed to be made because of the wake-up call it sends. But Rob Thompson wasn't doing anything that Don Mattingly is doing now, and vice versa. It was a good time for them to make that move, though.
Yeah, it's always my favorite, my sarcastically favorite take. Whenever things are going wrong with the team, it's like, wow, they can't hit. Fire the hitting coach. Well, they can't pitch. Fire the pitching coach. Like, Caleb Cotham's actually a really good reason to believe in Derek Johnson, because he was once a top lieutenant for Derek Johnson here in Cincinnati. And then hitting wise, like, the Reds lineup has woken up. And there's a lot of folks that were like, get rid of the hitting coach like a month ago. Now we see what it is. It's about the players on the field. And the Phillies have a lot of good players in their lineup, a lot of good players in their pitching staff. And so when it comes to chasing the Braves, as opposed to chasing a wild card, where's your confidence at?
I predicted ahead of the season the Phillies to win 91 games and to be in second place in the National League East. I did not think they would win the division this year because in past years, the Phillies have been runaway division winners, clear by the games, because it was injury collapse for the Braves in one year, and it was the Mets' late season collapse last year that allowed them to win the NL East. They haven't been in a year-long dogfight. And we've seen in the postseason this team, when they get under that type of pressure, they have crumbled. So if they get in a long 162, drag it out, try and catch a team or something like this, I don't have as much faith in them, which isn't a bad thing because winning the NL East has been a curse the last couple of postseasons anyway. But I'm focused on just finding a way in. There was a point where their playoff percentage dropped into the low 30s. If you can just find your way into the postseason after what you went through to start the year, firing your manager and giving this team and this roster a chance, that's good enough for me. But your division's a totally different story. What in the world is going on in the NL Central, and where do you think the Reds stand?
Well, and that's the funny part, because you mentioned playoff percentages. I don't think the Reds have been above 10% for like the last 3 weeks, and I still feel really good about their chances to win this division. It is a dogfight every single step of the way, this division, and the Reds kind of fallen behind a little bit early. They've been swept by the Cubs. They've lost 6 of 7 to the, or is it 5 of 6? No, 6 of 7 against the Pirates. And so you're a little bit like, I don't necessarily know that that's going to be a good thing. Or 5 of 6. That's what 5 of 6 against the Pirates. Sorry, my numbers are all off in my brain. But when it comes to how they're going to fare the rest of the year, I think there's so many of these like slumps that they're working through in the lineup and in the pitching staff that are just not going to be there later on in the year. And how the schedule has changed, you play less than a third. No, it's a third. You play a third of your schedule against divisional opponents. 2/3 of it is against non-divisional opponents, which right now the Reds are doing pretty good against. And so I think that ultimately they're going to be able to buoy struggles against the division with how they've played against everybody else. And I think that they're going to finish out on top. The Cubs and the Brewers right now are the teams that are pacing the division, but I think that the Cubs are a bit of a mirage when it comes to their pitching staff, and their lineup is good, but I don't necessarily know that it's great. Meanwhile, the Brewers are the class of the division. They have been for years, and I think that they're kind of like the big bad that you have to get. They're the final boss of the division that you got to get past. But I believe that the Reds have the stuff to get past them this year. It's gonna take some work, and they certainly have a lot of work to do to get there, being that they're in 4th place and just 2 games over 500. But at the end of April, they were there. So they've seen themselves at the top of the mountain. I think they can get back there by the end of this year. It's just going to take a little bit more doing and a little bit more belief than what Reds fans have given them here in the month of May, being that they had the worst record in all of baseball heading into Philadelphia in this wonderful month that we're currently in. So I believe in them still, but you're right. Like, I did not see the NL Central, everyone being over 500, and I definitely don't think that's going to finish that way. But I think that you can win it with 87 to 90 wins will probably take this division.
Well, I'll tell you what, coming into Citizens Bank Park, taking 2 of 3, I don't care who's starting for the Phillies. I don't care that Kyle Schwarber didn't play. We've got enough that this is still a tough team to beat. And for you guys doing that, that's a good accomplishment and hopefully a springboard where you're not struggling as much building off of that. For the Phils, they were on a heater. They dropped their first series under interim manager Don Mattingly. It's the first time it's happened since he took over. You're going to come back down to earth at some point. The question is, how do they respond with a tough stretch coming up?
Guardians for the Phillies this weekend. Reds are getting the Cardinals coming into town. Talk about a team that's hot. I really think that they're getting ready to hit the earth. Hopefully the Reds will be the team that does that for them. There's so much to cover, though, when it comes to both of our teams. Make sure that you're following Locked On Phillies and Locked On Reds right here on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. We'll be breaking down the weekend on Monday's episodes and so much more coming your way. And we'll be previewing the series on tomorrow's show as well, because we are Locked On Reds and Locked On Phillies every single day, because we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.